In 1994, Bethesda Studios released what is nowadays universally hated and in those days was met with mixed reviews at best, The Elder Scrolls Arena. Last week, I spent roughly 20 minutes or so describing my first and only 2 hours with the game. It was a confusing mess that had no direction or purpose, it was overly difficult, and in fact, in my last video, I described the experience as a dungeon master whose only intent was to kill their players. It almost felt like an answer to some kind of complaint that RPG games of the time were too easy. I'm not sure if this is true or not because my experience in 1994 was being 1 year old and I wasn't quite the staggering peak masculine hardcore gamer you see before you now.
What?
But what I can tell you is after I finished editing Arena, I went into some discussion forums about DaggerFall, read some articles and did my due diligence, and everyone seems to agree that DaggerFall is Arena, but better. And I like that idea. Arena had some really cool ideas about what exploration and prepping for dungeons that I really enjoyed if it weren't for the fact that everything killed you incredibly quickly, and combat felt like moving your cement shoes through molasses, and I hated it. So the idea of Arena but everything was done correctly sounded like music to my ear. Perhaps Daggerfall would be the thing that turned me into a mid-90s PC RPG fan. Hi, my name is Kaiser, and on this channel I do video game reviews, rants, and opinions, and if that's something that interests you, then please click that subscribe button down below, as currently we are in the middle of what I like to call the Elder Scrolls journey, where I sit down and play all of the mainline Elder Scrolls games to decide whether or not I'm a fan of the series or just a fan of Skyrim. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's hop right into Elder Scrolls Daggerfall. Chapter 1, a tutorial of torture. I learned two things from my Arena playthrough. Always save after everything you do, and camp even when you are only missing a sliver of health. These two things are necessary knowledge for the absolute hellscape that is the tutorial cave of Daggerfall. Our game starts off with the Emperor asking us to investigate why the ghost of the previous king of Daggerfall is haunting his old kingdom. Interestingly enough, we are actually the same character from the previous game, the Eternal Champion, as they would come to be called, and we are considered a good friend of the Emperor. None of that information helps us in our journey, of course, as discretion is of the utmost importance. For some reason. I'm not honestly sure why ridding the kingdom of Daggerfall of a powerful, vengeful poltergeist is something we need to be hush-hush about, but hey, they gotta keep this "we are friends of the Emperor, but he will offer us exactly zero help" plot point somehow, so whatever. Apparently our ship crashed and we ended up in a cave with a corridor behind us. Now, let's get some praise out of the way. Daggerfall allows us to remap our controls. Thank fuck for that! Now I don't have to spend an hour troubleshooting another remap mod. Daggerfall also controls a bit more fluidly, which I'm thankful for. There's also less screen clutter, as somewhere in messing around with settings I managed to get rid of the bottom UI and couldn't turn it back on. That's okay though. After fucking around some more, I learned that everything can be accessed through some pretty simple keybinds, and I was on my way. With that out of the way, I would like someone at Bethesda who worked on this game now to send me a personal letter of apology, because what the ever-living fuck was going through your minds when you decided that not only should the tutorial level have rats, bats, and humans, but also imps you can't damage without a spell, and you only have enough magicka to cast a spell once without resting, and sometimes that spell won't even hit. Or how about bears that tank damage like the most mentally stable friend at the group roast? I died several times during the tutorial level. I died several times during this game, but that's not the point right now. The tutorial level in games is meant to set up the rest of the game. It exists for the game's mechanics and guidance. It is not meant to be something you can constantly die in. It's not a fucking gauntlet, it's the fucking classroom. And remember, when in the first game that weird blue lady gave you directions to get out, no such luck here. This tutorial level is set up for every other dungeon in the game, an absolute fucking labyrinth of shit that will leave you confused and frustrated. While making my way through this place, I found several issues with the combat. For one, that hold, right-click, and drag to attack bullshit is back. I guess this was the standard back in the day. The game actually does tell you this go-round that the direction you swing your weapon does have an impact on a chance to hit. Great stuff! Except how it impacts your chance to hit, the game is tight-lipped about. I assumed at some point that the angle of the enemy, as well as their weak points, would mean something. Skeleton warriors, for example, which, as a side note, are some of the hardest enemies in the game, hitting you like a fucking 18-wheeler while taking absolutely ages to die, have a shield in their left hand, your right, so swinging the blade from left to right would often land a hit, while right to left would give you the distinguished cling of banging off their shield. Great stuff, except for the fact that the game has a nasty habit of just not letting you swing. You see, the old movement controls are still in the game. If your cursor hits the sides of the screen, then the cursor will turn into an arrow, and this means that the game will only allow you to hold left click to move or turn. So if your cursor goes too far, which in some cases was more than 5 inches away from the edge of the screen, the game would not register the right click to allow you to start the drag. So the go-to technique in combat is to hold down right click while swinging the mouse wildly, hoping something will hit. I understand that this requires a tad more finesse, and I should have taken my time with combat, but it feels impossible to do when everything can kill you so unbelievably fast. Early on in the tutorial areas, I found loads of chainmail armor and a steel daikatana, which became my weapon of choice for most of this playthrough. This would prove to not quite be enough, but before we get to that... Chapter 2, An Exploration in Ruins. After over an hour of throwing myself at the brick wall that was the tutorial cave, I finally emerged from the depths, and the first thing the game does is have you stare at a map of the world. Outstanding. Knowing I'm supposed to be in DaggerFall, my first order of business was to open up the world map and fast travel to the nearest town to sell all my shit and see if I can find a plot point. This motherfucker caked up to hell! Holy shit! No, turn back around. Hold on, no. Look at this! I could balance a fucking Christmas tree on them cheeks! After fucking around for a bit, and there's a lot of fucking around in this game, I eventually get a letter to meet some lady in a tavern who's an ambassador of the Emperor and who is going to give me leads on to where to find the story. I go talk to her, and then she gives me 3 leads for 3 different countries. I want to investigate the one in DaggerFall first, since that's where I am, and after aimless searching, talking to NPCs, and wondering what the fuck to do, I decided to look it up. And here I discovered that the game won't actually let you progress the story until you are level 6. Fair enough. It's probably something they did after many people complained about the Stone Keep bullshit from the first game. They want to make sure you're familiar with the game and are a high enough level to handle future combat sequences. I'm down. But what would happen next would be that I would spend the next 5.5 hours wandering around, desperately doing anything I could to level up, and I would simultaneously go everywhere, do everything, but accomplish absolutely nothing. DaggerFall is an expert, nigh a master, no, a god even, of fucking you about. This game sends you to 1,000 different locations at a turtle's pace, only for there to be nothing when you get there. My first strategy was to look for odd jobs, build up my gold while simultaneously gaining levels. I figured getting from level 2 to 6 would take at most 2 to 3 hours if I just hard did odd jobs. A few problems. 1. NPCs are either useless or semi-useless. Just like in Arena, in order to find anything, you need to ask around. NPCs will either tell you the direction of the place, mark it on your map, or have no idea what you're talking about. And this gets absolutely asinine at times. Go and find her at the Fox and the Dog. I heard that name somewhere before, but I have no idea where. Mordware Buckingfield? Could it fucking be that you just told me about it 2 seconds ago? Because each type of answer is randomly generated. In fact, the random generation of the game comes back to bite you in the ass in more than a few ways. At one point, I was sent to slay this spell sword. After killing her, I found a plate cuirass on her body. Excitedly, I went to equip it, whereupon the game helpfully informed me that I, a spell sword, could not equip plate. Then why the fuck did the spell sword I just kill have plate on her, you stupid fucking game? Anyway, because of these randomly generated responses, you can often find yourself moving to and from multiple NPCs, asking over and over again where something or someone is, are there any jobs available, or what have you, and constantly get told to piss off and ask someone else until you finally get one who answers you. And even when they do answer you, there is a chance that the person will either not be where they say they are, the person with the job won't give you a job, or the job will cancel itself out somewhere in between accepting it and starting it. 2. Let's say you get a job to go to another town and beat up some nobody or deliver a package. The job giver might tell you to go back and see them once your job is done to collect your payment. Great stuff. However, if you don't write down where you got the job or who gave it to you and even where they are located, you can end up completing the job, have it disappear from your quest log, and then never be able to collect on it because you forgot where the bloody bastard who gave you the job is. 3. Jobs more than likely will not send you to dungeons. Most of them are deliveries, petty squabbles, and once or twice finding someone and telling them to come home. Because of this, jobs do nothing, at least not that I could see, for increasing your level. So I ended up doing a shitload of jobs and sitting on a king's ransom of gold, only for nothing to happen to progress me throughout the game. My journey of odd jobs came to a screeching halt when I entered a home looking for a missing girl, only to get ambushed by some barbarians. I killed 3 of them and had almost killed the 4th when both they and I died at the same time, which happens more often than you would think, and when I went to reload the save, I had realized my save was over 2 hours prior and I had lost all that work. Defeated, I had to log off for the day, but I would be back. Chapter 3. Please, sir, may I have a crumb of progress? I decided over the night that instead of begging for odd jobs and constantly finding myself frustrated even if I was rich, it'd be better to use the dungeon finding feature of the game and go dungeon delving for a bit. After 3 dungeons back to back turned out to be tiny 1 to 4 room cemeteries, this proved pointless and back to odd jobs it was. Remember when I said DaggerFall excels at fucking you about? One major factor in this is how fucking ungodly slow you move. Getting anywhere takes ages. I can have several places to be and my character will take their sweet ass time meandering from place to another, slowly thrudging through the landscape. Navigation of towns has gotten a tad easier, with all taverns being highlighted green, shops are orange, and temples are blue. Some towns are small enough you can get from one place to the other fairly quickly, but others are so large you might as well pack a lunch. And it's a really good thing I just went to the store and got some deli meat. Another hindrance on any forward progress is the fact that, for some reason, shops no longer sell you items. Unless this feature is buried somewhere I couldn't find it, every shop will buy things from you, but none will have wares to offer. This is a problem mainly because it seems that the only way to get better equipment is to dungeon dive, but dungeon diving only ever provided me with weaker things I didn't need. This also makes acquiring potions difficult. I only got my hands on 2 potions throughout the playthrough, a shock resistance potion and a potion of free action. A quick but slightly unrelated tangent, the potion of free action is actually an entirely necessary potion, as if you come across something that paralyzes you, like these spider bitches, not having that potion will get you killed, as it, or the alteration spell, free action, is the only thing that can free you from paralysis. Otherwise, a repeat of what happened in Arena happens and the game will force you to sit there while the enemy kills you and there's nothing you can do about it but bend over, spread your cheeks, and beg for more. Back to the lack of progress. So many odd jobs, a couple of dungeons, and sometime later, I still, after over 6.5 hours of gameplay, have not gained a level, and I'm starting to get frustrated. Now remember, all the way back when I said that saving, and saving constantly, is essential. Well, here's why. Daggerfall, much like its predecessor, hates you. It hates you so much, you will die to random things you didn't know were there just like before. At one point, I walked into a tavern to wait for a store to open up, and I started getting attacked by something I quite literally could not see and died for it. But the final nail in the coffin was this. I was sent by the Fighters Guild to retrieve some fake gold bars. I walked into the bank and came face to face with some enemies. As I was prepared to fight them, the game crashed, and my last save was over an hour and a half prior. Chapter 4. Conclusion. I never wanted to end Daggerfall without finishing it. I told myself I was going to go through everything this game had to offer. In the end, it was fruitless. Old PC games like Arena and Daggerfall suffer heavily from their outdated designs. While Arena absolutely hated the player and wanted them dead, Daggerfall wants you slowed to a crawl. I don't mind something like level limits to main story objectives being a feature. In fact, I greatly welcome it. But that needs to be met with some level of control for the player. At one point, I was nearly over-encumbered with this asinine amount of loot, and I had collected up to that point. The only shops who would buy my loot were armorers and weaponers. I fast traveled to over 7 different cities before finally one that even had one of the two, and when I finally spent nearly 5 minutes trudging my way to said armorer, they were closed, whereupon I had to trudge all the way back across town to a tavern so I can rest the 3 in-game hours for the shop to be back open, and then once I got back to that shop, the shopkeeper wouldn't buy from me because of my reputation, which I wasn't even aware was changing in any significant way because all I had been doing for the past 3 hours was random deliveries and escort quests. So now I became hated by the townsfolk I couldn't even tell you. Everything about DaggerFall seems to be for the purposes of getting you to slow down, but the amount you slow down is, in the simplest terms, fucking obnoxious. You spend so much time trudging back and forth between people, looking for any ounce of something to do, and that it all just feels like busy work. DaggerFall is a game where you play at 2 in the morning in the dark with your favorite album on the boombox. It was meant to be a game you lose yourself in, and I can respect that, but I am constantly ripped out of the immersion by the RNG system's fucking all sense and logic. I am glad future titles moved away from the design philosophy of Arena and DaggerFall. While they may have been milestones for their time, they are horribly outdated, and I think even the most devout Elder Scrolls fan would not enjoy them. All I can really say is, I can't wait for Morrowind. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys stopping by for this one. I am honestly kind of sorry that I didn't finish this one. After not finishing Chrono Trigger or Arena, I told myself that my next review it had to be a game that I finished, and I couldn't finish it. I couldn't do it. It was so just unbelievably boring and terrible, and when it crashed I just took that as a sign to move on. But I do promise that I will finish Morrowind, especially because I have a lot that I want to do in Morrowind. I'll talk more about that in the future. But if you've played Daggerfall, please, of course, let me know you guys' comments down below. I'd really appreciate it. I love reading them, and it also helps me out in the algorithms. And as always, a special thank you to our channel members, Nuclear Bomb, Gamer Geek, Peter RJ, and Spirit Upgrades for their additional support. If you want to know how to become a channel member today for as little as $2 a month upwards, then go ahead and click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.